Hey guys, this is Nick, and this is the very first geeky review that I'm going to do. This one is going to be on Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal came out a couple weeks ago. It took me a little bit longer than I was hoping to actually get through the game, so I could do an appropriate review. The game overall itself I found very, very enjoyable. There were a lot of changes in the mechanics from Doom 2016 to the current one that we got this year. Most notably is they devised a way of separating out a lot of the mechanics. They get you your armor, they get you your health, and they added multiple other melee mechanics on top of that. So let's go ahead and go with the first thing that everybody's more interested in Doom than anything else, and that being the mechanics. The mechanics, the very core of them, the aiming, the shooting, the level design, all that is quintessential id. It's phenomenal and top-notch in every single way. You could not ask for anything better in those types of mechanics. Where the game starts to change and change itself a bit is when it starts going into replenishment mechanics. Now, what I mean by that is if you're sitting there and you're starting to get low on ammo, you have to use the chainsaw. There are very few ammo drops in the game set up around for you to be able to collect ammo, unlike the last one. Now, if you need armor, you have to use the new flame belcher. That's the only thing that will actually get you armor in the game, as far as I'm aware. You have to set something on fire. Later on, you get the super shotgun that has the meat hook, and that will give you some armor as well. But it doesn't give you as much as actually using the flame belcher. The other thing that you get is your normal Gore Kills, which are reminiscent and exactly just like they were in the last one. Now, if you didn't like that mechanic in the last one and you were hoping they were going to change that up, you're going to be highly disappointed in this one. That mechanic is still there in firm play, and it is necessary to keeping your health up during the middle of a fight. Now, they added in a blood punch, which is kind of a melee explosion when you punch somebody that hits multiple opponents. Later on, you can upgrade that to where that will give you some health as well, but it does not give you as much health as a Gore Kill does. The next mechanic they added in is you get something called the Crucible. It's like a big sword that you've probably seen in some of the trailers. That is capable of killing virtually any enemy in one hit. Now, it takes charges, and there are little icons that show up on the stages to help you replenish those charges. Each swing does a kill and takes one charge. You can only store 3 charges, and there is no way to upgrade that. Now, this many melee mechanic starts to make the combat really bizarre, really fast, to where you have to constantly be paying attention to how much armor you have, how much health you have, how many blood punches you have up, because eventually you can store more than one. Then you also have to pay attention to the fact of, is there an enemy out there I need to one-shot, and how do I equip that? Do I need ammo? Do I need to use the chainsaw? And this becomes some sort of like gory ballet that you have to balance throughout the entirety of the game. The difficulty with these kinds of mechanics is there's so many, the game starts to feel so bogged down by them that you're constantly having to map things to various different keys, or you're having to like basically juggle all these at the same time. Part of the problem that I have with that is 2016 was very clean in what you had to do. Almost everything was tied to the Gore Kill. Now, I know not everybody enjoyed the Gore Kills, but it was a very clean, very simple mechanic. If you needed health, you needed armor, you basically did those. You eventually got some ammo from them, and ammo was kind of universal and just kind of filled up everything all at one time. You didn't have various different ammos that I can recall, except for BFG ammo. Now, BFG ammo is still separate from all the other ammo that you get in the game. Those are only spawns. Those do not come from enemies, which I completely agree with and feel that should be that way. If you could get BFG ammo by Gore killing people, the game would be so broken, it wouldn't even be funny. So, with that in mind, between that and all the armaments you have, the game becomes a little more difficult to juggle, on top of a game that's already exceedingly more difficult than its predecessor. They basically went and said, okay, 2016 is your training wheels phase. Well, time to rip those off and throw them to the wind. And basically from the get-go, the game is significantly more difficult than its predecessor. Not the least is because they've separated all the various different mechanics as far as your replenishment goes, so that you have to remember to juggle those while you're dodging enemies and dealing with new spawns, and you're dealing with buff totems and guys that can spawn other guys and cyber demons and everything else under the sun. The bosses themselves, too, are significantly more challenging in this one and require a lot more mechanical know-how in order to defeat. The first one isn't too bad. He's kind of a floating tank-looking thing that you have to break his shield, and then you can punish him with a significant amount of damage. He's not that bad. He takes a little bit of doing, but he's not that hard to deal with overall in the scheme of things. The next one is the Marauder, and he's probably the more famous of the bosses that's in this game. And this guy's a nightmare. There are multiple videos showing you how to deal with this guy relatively easily. I did not have that kind of time with him. I had a much more difficult time dealing with him every time I ran into him. So much so, he kind of sucked some of the fun out of the game once he hit the game. Mostly because he's completely immune to all super weapons. He has a very small window which you can counter him, which is the only way to make him open for any damage. He will completely block everything until his eyes flash, and then he will lunge at you and you hit him then, and that staggers him. Then you have to hit him again in order to do any real damage. Matter of fact, the first time I ran into him, I thought I was going to have to restart the game because I couldn't swap weapons fast enough or reload my current weapon, which was the super shotgun, fast enough to do any damage to him after I had staggered him. I had to actually invest points in cooldown on the super shotgun so that cooldown was 33% on its loading so that I could actually deal with him in any kind of reasonable manner. And later on, he becomes a normal boss. Luckily, he's not too frequent because every time he comes in, it becomes this run around and grab ammo and grab armor and grab health. Do a shot here, stagger him here, dodge a few more times, kill a couple more things that spawn, come back to him again. And he's just a nuisance that kills the flow of the gameplay in the game. I really do not know what they were thinking when they added this guy into the game, but in my opinion, he kind of grinds the combat, which had hit a nice even flow throughout the game of hit this guy, deal with this guy, okay, break this armor, okay, hit these 2 points, okay, now do this, now do that you've managed to mechanically handle, and breaks all those rules to where you have to wait on him. You're not an active participant, you're waiting on him to do a mechanic so you can react. So instead of all the proactive gameplay of dealing with weak points, which I haven't covered yet, along with replenishing all your different various resources, you now have to wait on this guy to come at you and deal with all the stuff that he spawns, which he spawns this little ethereal dog thing that will attack you and slow you, which is the bane of your existence in this game. This game is all about speed and dexterity, along with being able to replenish all your various different resources. Once he enters in and he's on the playing field, it becomes all about dealing with his mechanics and waiting on openings on it. It completely flips around the way the game plays. And in that respect, I did not enjoy that at all. Later on in the game, it kind of becomes a little bit more of a slog because you run into multiple waves of heavy enemies that don't really have any major weaknesses. Which brings me into the weaknesses points. You spend a good 3 or 4 hours in this game explaining to you how to dissect various different enemies. Because unlike the first one where things just took a lot of punishment, now you need to take out specific key things. The arachnid drone things will have a turret on the back of them, like up here, and you have to shoot that. That forces them to close in on you and does significant damage to them. Once you've dealt with that, then you can like whittle them down with another weapon or shoot some rockets in them if you have the rocket launcher and deal with them in an expedient manner. The flame belcher guys that come out, they have the 2 side cannon things on them. When you're dealing with them, you have to shoot the 2 cannons off. Once you shoot the 2 cannons off, they're significantly easier to deal with. Revenants are a similar thing. They have rocket launchers up on their backs. Those are probably the most famous ones from the last game. Matter of fact, it was a statue that came with the Uber edition. You shoot those off, and then he'll charge in on you, and he's significantly easier to kill with. He's barely any stronger than a normal zombie at that point, because he's taken so much damage from you blowing those off. Those mechanics you have to keep in mind while you're keeping in mind every other mechanic in the game. So it's gotten very technical, very fast, with more difficult encounters, more enemies, and more challenging enemies all at the same time. So if you had challenges with the 2016 version of Doom, strap in, Buttercup, because you're in for a hell of a ride. Now, the next thing to go into is kind of the story and the art style of the game. I actually rather enjoyed the story, but I was a little confused with certain things that I wish they had clarified or that they will clarify later on. I'm hoping, like, how did you end up in this, like, the floating castle thing on part of a moon above the earth at the start of the game? There's really no explanation for that. You have to go find Samuel Hayden again, and there's no great explanation of what happened to him shortly after that took him to the point to where you find him. They do a good job of trying to give you a backstory for the Slayer himself, though it's kind of so-so and not really detailed. Then they go a little bit more into what Argent Energy is, which they never explained in the last one. They do pretty well explain in this one. And then you have the whole overarching story of you trying to save humanity, which pretty much culminates with like the final sin stage, which is the last stage of the game, which is just a mess. So the overall story is good, but not great. Don't expect anything amazing out of it. Expect significantly better than what you got out of 2016, where basically he just took the story and just shoved it to the side and said, screw that noise, let's go kill stuff. The next is the art style. I was a little taken aback by the art style on this one from the beginning, primarily because it's a lot more old school Doom, the best way I can think of to put it. It's more bright and colorful. There are more varied stages. A lot of the pickups seem very retro. Like the health vials are now like literal vials like they were in the original game, and they're almost a little pixelated like they were in the original game. There's armor pickups like helmets and chest pieces and stuff like that. There's 1-ups in the game, which I think is why they ramped up the difficulty, because since you can get 1-ups, you respawn right where you're at and you don't have to go back to a previous checkpoint. So they can really just throw all sorts of crap at you and let it kill you, because if you've stocked up enough 1-ups, then you're fine. Speaking of 1-ups, you can farm the hell out of those in this game. And if you're struggling with the last stage, go back and get some collectibles. As you go back and get back up the collectibles, turn on like infinite lives and like all that other goodness so that you can just lay waste to the stage in like 5 minutes. And even with infinite lives, any 1-ups you pick, apply to your stack of 1-ups. Yeah, I had 33 going into like the last 4 stages. And I think I finished the game with 19. So that is how bad, like the last 4 stages, in particular the last 2 stages, will rip into you. So be warned that the last couple of stages in this game, as any game that starts to ramp up that curve, starts to get incredibly brutal in the very last part of it. So that being said, overall, I'd have to say I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was paced pretty well. I thought the gameplay was really good. I thought the melee combat was pretty well overburdened a little bit. They need to cut down on some of these things that they've got because there's just too many of them to juggle. And if you happen to play on the up, down, left, right arrows, you have no way of mapping anything. This game was designed for a controller or WSAD. And even using the WSAD keys, which is my preference, I had to map almost everything I could to my mouse. I had my weapon wheel mapped. I had my flame belcher mapped. I had my grenade mapped. I had my Crucible mapped to 1 key. And then I had my melee kills here, and I had my chainsaw on the keyboard just around me. So I was using both a fully laid out mouse and keyboard in order to play this game. So if you don't have that, I recommend you get a controller and get used to using a controller on and learn how to work that, because it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to play this on a PC otherwise, which is the format that I played it on. Now we kind of get to the bug section. This game honestly didn't have too many bugs. It wasn't too bad as far as gameplay goes, but there were 2 really notable ones that I noticed. One is early on in the first week or 2 of the game, the screen would just kind of pixelize and then go black on the PC version. And the only way to fix it was to hit the escape key and bring up the main window and then hit escape again, and then it would resolve everything again and you'd be okay. After about 2 weeks or so, that got fixed and another bug cropped up. It would randomly just shut down the application. And it actually did that to me on the last stage, much to my frustration. Fortunately, the way this game worked is I had already gotten to a checkpoint. So when I came back in, I was only like maybe 1 fight shy of where I was at when it actually closed. So that is a saving grace of how it works. But also, it kind of requires you to be able to like kind of sync up and for it to save things. And again, it's a digital game, and they want you connected because they want to throw all these challenges and keep you coming back and have you doing like the master levels, which open up after you beat the game, that allow you to kind of further add some more content to the game to give you something else to do that are more significantly difficult challenges than the main game itself. For my part, I haven't dove into those yet. I have barely dove into getting all the collectibles. I got all the lore items. I still have not gotten all the albums. Have not gotten all the toys. I still haven't gotten all the weapon modifications. I did finish the suit. So there's still a significant amount of content in this, just in the base game, that I can kind of go back and finish up that I have not done yet. So with that said, would I recommend this game? I'd say yes. If you're a PC owner, if you're a console owner, and you're a fan of arcade-style shooters, you owe it to yourself to pick this one up and play it. Would I give it a 10 out of 10? No. Because of the bugs, because of the bogged downness of the actual gameplay due to all the new melee mechanics and things like that. I feel they could have done a better job with the story overall, even though it's significantly improved from the last one. And that's really actually the main beefs that I have in the game. I can't think of much else that I would pretty much dig on this game for. I would definitely recommend giving it a try and seeing if you enjoy it. I know some people, particularly a friend of mine, Picky Old Gamer, which I think is going to do his own review on this, has kind of been unhappy with it because of the way they changed all the melee mechanics. And that has really put a damper on the game's enjoyment for him, which kind of makes me sad because this one I feel like is 4 steps forward with maybe 1 step back, meaning it's got a few glitches. Apparently the PS4 version just locks up and you have to shut it down, so that's a bigger glitch than the bugs that I've mentioned that he's had problems with himself. So keep that in mind as well. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully it was informative, and hopefully you had a fun time listening to it. Let me know if you like this content. I'm hoping to be able to make this into more of a regular thing and kind of get through some of my games a little bit more and kind of interact with you guys with how I thought about them and give you guys some information to kind of go back and forth and decide whether or not you actually want to invest in the game. I'm significantly later than I wanted to be on this one, but it took me probably 25 hours of time or more to get through the game. I'm not very fast at Doom. I tend to get distracted by picking up collectibles, and I tend to replay stages to go get them and things like that. So that eats up more of the time before I actually finish the main story. I tend to not want to rush through these games. So I apologize for the tardiness. I'm hoping I can get through them a little bit quicker in the future. But until next time, guys, I'm out.